I've been selected by Matt Hoffman to do the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. You're gonna have to pardon my notes here, but I have a lot to say about this subject, so I wrote a lot of stuff down. First of all, I want to note that I wasn't exactly sure how to answer this challenge because on the one hand, I support donating to ALS 100%. It's a horrible, debilitating disease, and we need to find a cure for it, plain and simple. But at the same time, I don't necessarily support the campaign 100%. I'm not going to sit here and be a hater, though. So I want to tell you some of the good things about the Ice Bucket Challenge first. What I really liked about the Ice Bucket Challenge was, first of all, it raised a ton of awareness. Something that's viral like that gets spread around Facebook and the rest of the internet is huge. Not just because you're donating money, but because now people actually know what ALS is. They know a little bit more about it. So that's very important. Secondly, the campaign raised a ton of money for ALS. I think I read it that they made $60 million. Actually, I think it's in my notes further down. So they made a ton of money, and that's really awesome as well. And third, probably my favorite thing, is that it was participatory. It allowed families to participate, it allowed the kids to get involved, and at least you could use that as a learning experience to teach or a teaching moment to teach your kids about the importance of charitable giving. All that being said, there are a few things that kind of bothered me about the ALS challenge. Probably the most important is that it wastes water, and I will talk about that later. I actually have a little more to talk about that further into this video, but I'll leave it at that for now. It wastes water, it's a big deal, and I'll tell you why a little bit later. Two, if you've watched any of these fail videos that are out there, it causes injuries. A lot of people are like dumping buckets on each other's heads. They can't support the weight of the ice. People are like, literally, I'm watching stuff where the bucket drops from like a really tall deck and smacks somebody in the head. So that can't be a good thing. There's got to be like a little bit of an issue with that, although it's not nearly as serious as the water thing. And then the last thing is that although it's participatory, and I know I said that was my favorite thing that I liked about ALS, at the same time, while it's participatory, the action that you're doing has absolutely nothing to do with ALS whatsoever. Dumping a bucket of water on your head, of ice water on your head, doesn't relate to the ALS, and the activity itself doesn't fundamentally do anything to change the state of ALS. The only thing that I guess would make it good was that it went viral. But a lot of people call this kind of charitable activity slacktivism because it's an activity that's relatively easy to do. Somebody can do it, and a lot of times they don't even donate. They just dump the bucket of ice water on their head, and they're like, well, at least I'm spreading awareness. Or it makes them feel like they've done something that's really profoundly effective. But in reality, like, there's not much effort put into filling up a bucket with water and ice and dumping it on your head. And it doesn't really do much for ALS. So those are my kind of cons and things I don't like about the challenge. So that all being said, I'm not going to be some punk and like just bitch out. So that's not going to happen. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and kind of come up with a little variation on the ALS challenge. The rules state that you must either dump a bucket of ice on your head or donate $100 to the ALSA, which is the charitable organization that does a lot of the research into ALS. I'm going to switch it up a bit, and I'm going to divide my $100 between 4 charities. Just kind of spread the wealth around, and you'll see why I'm doing this in a minute. So let's talk about my charities here. I have those under my clipboard. The first charity I want to talk about is one that I gave $25 to, and that's ALS, the ALSA. So I just want to show you here. Here's $25. This is my receipt. I'm going to try to get as close to the camera as I can and see if you can see it. $25. Okay, so that's for the ALS. Why did I make that donation? Well, because it is a horrible, debilitating disease, like I said. At the same time, I've read that they made $60 million this year, which is 20 times what they normally make. So I thought I could spread the wealth around a little bit. So let's move on then to my second organization that I donated to. And this one's personal to me. But first, before I talk about that, I'll show you the receipt here. Here's $25 right here. And this goes out to the Multiple Sclerosis Society or Foundation. National MS Society, not foundation, but society. So the National MS Society, that's where I gave that $25 to. And the reason, first and foremost, is that my mom has MS, and I love my mama. But also at the same time, ALS is a degenerative neurological disease, and so is multiple sclerosis. The only difference, or not the only difference, but a major difference between the two is while ALS is fatal, MS in most cases is not. Nevertheless, MS is not fun. They haven't found a treatment for it yet, so they're still looking, and I don't like to see my mom dealing with it. So that's why I made that decision. Okay, so the next check, I gave $25 to an organization. Let me show you this. It's called the TBDA. TBDA stands for Tick-Borne Disease Alliance. So why did I give $25 to the Tick-Borne Disease Alliance? Well, for multiple reasons. First off, I'll just say this. The big connection here is that Lyme disease is often falsely diagnosed as multiple sclerosis or ALS. So MS or ALS, a lot of people that are walking around thinking that they have MS or ALS might actually have Lyme disease. So they're kind of all related here, which is why I wanted to give to that organization as well. But there's a more important reason that I wanted to give to that organization, and that's that I have a good friend, Julia Fraley, who suffers from Lyme disease. And I can tell you it isn't fun. There's no diagnostic test for Lyme, so it can only be clinically diagnosed, and that's a problem. I'm actually going to stop there and come back to that in a second. I just want to tell you about Julia for a second. If you know Julia, I know a lot of you do and a lot of you don't, but if you don't, then you're missing out because she's like one of the awesomest chicks out there, dude. She's awesome. Julia has Lyme disease, and she had it for a long time before she realized it. And as a result of that, she struggles with it daily. She's like at an 8 or 9 on the pain scale. And that's a real 8 or 9, not the 8 or 9 that like you give your doctor when, you want extra medicine or whatever. It's a real 8 or 9 on the pain scale almost every day. And you would think that this would crush her. And then you just follow her on Facebook, and, I hung out with her a handful of times in Cincinnati, but it's just every single day she has something positive to say, something valuable to add to the world, and she teaches me, at least, and should teach the rest of you, to appreciate what you have. So I'm tearing up. I'm going to stop there because I'm getting too emotional. But I want to talk about Lyme disease for a minute. As I was saying before, there's no diagnostic test for Lyme disease, so it's basically it can only be clinically diagnosed, which means a doctor has to determine based on the symptoms in front of them that you have Lyme disease. So because there's not a diagnostic test and it has to be clinically diagnosed, it causes some problems, and I'll talk about those in a minute. I also wanted to mention that most successful treatment of Lyme involves an extensive calendar of antibiotics treatment. This practice is frowned upon by a lot of the medical world because obviously, like this, as the common knowledge goes, too much antibiotics can decrease your immunity can increase your immunity to antibiotics, and they're less effective. So they don't want doctors prescribing long-term antibiotics. Nevertheless, the only people that ever make it, the only people that in reality, in the real world, who get treated and make it from Lyme disease, or at least late-stage Lyme disease, are the ones who go on these extensive antibiotic treatments. So you have the medical community frowning on it, half of them, or a good portion of them, and then you have this other group of people that's like fighting for the right to give these patients long-term antibiotics. Also, because so little is known about how to diagnose Lyme, I'm going to just read what I wrote here. Patients are often marginalized by doctors who think that they're suffering from a psychological condition. A person with Lyme can look completely normal on the surface, yet suffer from tremendous pain. And because many doctors are unable to diagnose the disease, they presume the patient is making the whole thing up in their head. This adds psychological trauma to the physical trauma the patient is already suffering. And I also want to add, on top of the fact that the medical community often like basically tells you it's all in your head and you don't know what you're talking about and this pain isn't real. I mean, to the point that some patients actually start to believe, like, well, maybe I am crazy. Um, on top of that, the insurance companies realize that this can't be diagnosed through testing, and therefore they're not going to cover it. So if you have Lyme disease, you're not getting treatment. At least you're not getting your treatment paid for by the insurance companies. So those are the reasons I gave to Lyme disease. I'm getting close to the end here. I got one more check and then a final note. All right. So this is my donation form for the last charitable organization, and it might seem like it doesn't relate, but I'll type. Well, you know why it relates. Never mind. Let me just show it to you. There's $25. This is going to Charity Water. I don't know if you can see it, but Charity Water is my last nonprofit that I donated to, and they got $25 as well. So it was split 4 ways. One of my biggest issues with the Ice Bucket Challenge is how much water is wasted. And I'd note that potable water is an extremely valuable resource that we might not realize from our position, as you know, from our world of privilege that we live in the first world countries. Some of my Facebook friends have heard this criticism and are quick to point out that we use more water when we shower, flush the toilet, or brush our teeth than is used in these Ice Bucket Challenges. Well, I have 3 responses to that. My first response is sure, but those 3 actions are required for basic hygiene. Dumping ice water in your head is not. So that's plain and simple right there, right? Like, I need to brush my teeth. I need to take a shower. You know, I need to go to the restroom. I don't need to dump a bucket of ice on my head. It doesn't serve any purpose. Secondly, even if you consider it to be just a little bit of water that's being dumped on your head and it not being, you know, such a big deal because it's just that amount of water, I would point out that the ALS raised over $60 million this year. And in most cases, that was raised $100 at a time. So I don't know what the math is and how many of those people actually did the challenge and didn't do the challenge. But when you consider that vast amount of people all doing this challenge, let's look at what the total amount of water is that's being used here and say, hey, is this a good idea that we're doing this? In fact, I'm going to go on a tangent here, but I'm thinking about investing in water rights right now. I've been looking into it, and there's actually a lot of rich dudes out there that are doing the same thing already because they know that we're running out of water and that they're going to be able to sell the rights to it at some point. And I mean, if you can't make money off of water when it's like a scarce resource, then you don't know what you're doing. So that's a side note, but that to illustrate how important water is right now and how much we overlook it in the first world. Okay, my third response to somebody that says it's not a ton of water is that this shouldn't be an argument. The fact that we use more water when we're brushing our teeth or when we're showering or using the restroom, the fact that more water is consumed in those instances is not an argument to go ahead and waste more water. In fact, it should be the other way around. The argument based on that premise should be, hey, let's turn the water off when we're brushing our teeth and let's not shower for, you know, like a super long time. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, cool. But like, let's be conscious about how we use water. And that's what I would have drawn from that premise, as opposed to, hey, you know, these things are all more wasteful than the ALS challenge, so let's just keep doing the challenge. That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so there's my response to that criticism of my criticism. And then finally, to drive this point home on water, I have some statistics that I wanted to give you about water to put it in perspective. And these come from the Charity Water website. Most of them do. Other than I bring in some ALS statistics for comparison. There are 300,000 deaths each week from unsafe drinking water. To put this in perspective, according to the ALSA website, roughly 5,000 people die from ALS each year in the United States. The website doesn't give worldwide stats other than to say that 2 people for every 100,000 die each year, or die from ALS each year. So I did the math, and I said, well, if it's 2 per 100,000, let's look up the total population, which was 7 billion people. I took 7 billion, I divided it by 100,000. We came up with 70,000. But then you have that 70,000 represents 2 people. So basically, you divide it by 2. You get 35,000 deaths each year from ALS worldwide. 35,000 each year from ALS worldwide, right? So, in 1 week, unsafe drinking water causes roughly 8.5 times as many deaths as ALS does in a year. 1 week is 8.5 times the amount of deaths as a year of ALS deaths. Does that put it all in perspective? And to top it off, this is the kicker. We know how to fix drinking water. We know how to fix this. We know how to give better water and fix these problems right now. The problem with ALS is research. They're trying to find a cure for ALS, which is a very important struggle. But here we have two problems. One is drinking water, one is ALS. ALS affects about 35,000 a year. Drinking water affects about 300,000 a week. Way more people affected by drinking water than ALS. And we have the solution already. We're just not employing it. So that's why I chose to give to charity water. A couple more statistics. Of that 300,000 people that die from unsafe drinking water each week, about 90% of those are children under the age of 5 due to the fact that their immune systems aren't fully developed. So it's a child welfare issue as well as being, just a poverty or an impoverished area or a third world issue. It's a child welfare issue. And it's also a gender issue. In Africa, women and children spend about 40 billion hours walking to get water. Water that is typically unprotected and contaminated. Not only is this a health risk, but the long walks often come with sexual assault and harassment. If we can put a clean source of drinking water near these women and children, near where they live, near their community, they will be able to refocus their time on education and income, on providing for their family and educating their family. Things that they can't do because they're spending so much time looking for water, for clean, drinkable water, just to survive. Lastly, I would state that charity water gives 100% of your donation to water projects, to water charities. So that's my spiel. I know this was a long video. I have to end with some nominations here, okay? So here's my nominations. I nominate, this is for the Ice Bucket Challenge, I nominate absolutely no one, okay? Now let me tell you why I'm doing this. First, I don't want to shame any of my friends into donating to charity. If you're going to be charitable, you should be charitable. It shouldn't be because somebody's pressuring you to do it. Second, and this is probably a bigger reason for me, is that in truth, while I don't want to pressure my friends into donating to charity, the reason behind that is not everybody has the money. But if you don't have the money, you should have the time. And while I'm not good with pressuring my friends into donating to charity, I'm definitely okay with pressuring them into volunteering or donating to charity. And for that reason, I am currently working on my own challenge, a challenge that I'm planning right now. I hope to have a video out, the seed video out for that, which will start the challenge out sometime in the next month or two. And because of that fact, and because of the fact that I literally have like 10 friends that I can consider like close friends that I would be willing to nominate for something like this, I'm going to save those 10 friends for my own challenge because I think the challenge that I'm working on is going to do a lot of the same good things that the ALS challenge did, which I don't deny, but I think it's going to fix a lot of those issues that the ALS challenge had. So that's my video. I do want to note one last thing here is I'm not putting any blame on the ALSA at all. They actually didn't come up with this idea to do the Ice Bucket Challenge. It kind of just happened. I get the feeling that maybe if somebody had put some planning into this, it might have been a little bit different. But that's my case. I didn't punk out. I donated to 4 charities, $100. No one's challenged, but close friends, stay tuned because you will be challenged in the next couple months. Thank you. Hey guys, it's me again. I just wanted to give you a quick update about something I said in the original video. I thought about reshooting the whole thing, but it was just too much work. But essentially, at one point in the video when I was talking about water, I gave the statistic that 35,000 deaths occur each year from ALS, and I derived that number by taking the world population of 7 billion, then dividing by 100,000, and then dividing by 2. But I did the math wrong. I should have actually multiplied by 2. So instead of 35,000, the true number is 140,000 people die worldwide from ALS each year. Now, that's an estimate, but what does that estimate mean? Before I had said that, the number of people that die from unsafe drinking water in a week was 8.5 times the amount of people that die in a year from ALS. Well, what it really means is the number's not 8.5 times anymore. It's 2 times, roughly 2 times. But that's still significant in that twice as many people die from unsafe drinking water in a week than the amount of people that die from ALS in a full year. So I wanted to give you that quick update because I didn't want to put false information out there. That's it. I won't add any more videos.